today's video is a pretty, I guess, taboo-ish subject, and it's all about what happens when a narcissistic parent dies. And this is something that a lot of adult children of narcissistic parents struggle with a lot, especially when you're setting boundaries, going no contact, all that kind of stuff. It can be really scary to have those thoughts of like, what am I going to regret this when my narcissistic parent dies? So this is actually something I recently went through. My narcissistic mother did pass away last month, and I'm going to tell you my story of, how I coped with it and the thoughts that I had before this all happened. And ultimately, long story short, I don't have any regrets of, setting those boundaries that I set with my mom. And my hope is that in sharing this experience, that anybody else who is struggling with this right now, who, maybe they've just recently gone no contact or very low contact, or started just setting boundaries with a narcissistic parent, or anybody who maybe their narcissistic parent is currently on their deathbed right now and they're just really confused with just all of their emotions and thoughts. So my hope is that this video is going to help anybody in that boat. So when I first started to set boundaries with my mom, I really did wonder if I would regret it when she died. She very much put the fear of God in me when I was a kid, when I was 5, of, when I die, you're going to be sorry you didn't treat your mother nicely or whatever, right? And it's you're saying this to a 5-year-old, hello. So, I really internalized that as a kid, of course, because that's what children do. And I kind of took this with me throughout my entire life. And, a story that is coming up for me right now is I was in my early 20s, and, this fear of my mom dying was just always huge within me, always. And, when I was in my early 20s, I still didn't know yet that she was narcissistic or anything like that. We had this weird, super close but not really mother-daughter relationship that people were envious of. And I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that, where it's you think you're so close to your narcissistic parent, but then it really turns out it was very one-sided, and they don't actually care about how you feel and all that kind of stuff. You just eventually find out you're an extension of them. So, while I was still in this mode, I do remember very, very clearly, I had gotten a new computer, and there were some photos of me and my mom on it. And, I was still in the phase of oh, let me post a photo for my mom's birthday because, she looks great for her age, and, she's the best mom ever, and, all that. So of course I did that kind of stuff in my early 20s, when I had no freaking clue that she was narcissistic, not a clue. And so I couldn't find the photos on my laptop, and I can't remember why, right? I think it was my new computer, and then I was trying to find the photos on the old computer or something. But I had a mental breakdown because I could not find the photos. And the biggest thing that was in my head was when she dies, I'm not going to have these photos. And holy shit, right? So I spent an hour just panicking about not finding the photos. I eventually, during that hour, I was searching like crazy. I found the photos, and then I was relieved. But then I had another little breakdown of, oh my God, I'm going to be so upset when she dies, and it's just going to be so sad, and all the bad things I did when I was a kid. And, when I was 5, I did this. When I was 8, I did this thing to her. I just kind of, I don't know, I guess my life flashed before my eyes, and I just had these thoughts of I'm going to feel so guilty when she dies. Oh my God, this is gonna be the worst thing ever. But I always had in the back of my head but I won't have to worry about that for several years, right? But then I'd always just have this fear of what if she gets into a car accident? What if, something's going on with her health that she doesn't know about? I was just very protective of what if she dies? So of course, when I started to set boundaries with her, when I found out she was a narcissist, like that thought was still in my head of like, what if she dies? Oh my God, what if she dies and she's a narcissist? And like, what if she dies? And what if I was wrong about believing that she's a narcissist? So yeah, I had all that, like all that went through my head for like, you know, my life, basically. So finding out she was narcissistic, this happened in 2014 initially, but I guess like because of the whole like, what if she dies, or whatever reason, like I just didn't want to believe it. I shoved my head back up my ass and decided to not believe that she's narcissistic. So I allowed her to continue abusing me, whatever, like, you know, and eventually by 2016, that's when I started finding the truth. Like I actually spoke to my father for like the first time since I was a kid. I was terrified of this man. I was alienated from him. I thought he was a horrible person, didn't pay child support, all that stuff. I think that's going to be a topic for another video for sure. So yeah, it was 2016 and I started really re-believing that she's narcissistic. She doesn't have my best interests out there. I need to move out of her house. She had been financially abusing me, trying to keep me financially handicapped so I wouldn't be able to move out, all that kind of stuff. So, you know, everything just started to kind of come together, but that doesn't mean that just because things were coming together that I didn't have these thoughts of, holy crap, what's going to happen when she dies? So definitely when I first started to set boundaries with her, I wondered if I would regret it when she died. When I first moved out, because I just could not handle the abuse anymore from her, I wondered what would happen if I would regret it when she died. There was even a time, Christmas 2016, so this, you know, that year was the year that I moved out, realized she was narcissistic, started setting like really heavy boundaries, and we went to her place for Christmas Eve dinner, 2016, so this was like, you know, almost a year had passed, and I actually walked out during dinner because she refused to respect my boundaries. She started talking about, you know, how much of a horrible person my dad was again, and at this point I was really upset because I had known the truth. I found out the truth. I found documents supporting the truth that like he did pay for child support, he didn't abandon us, he did have shared custody of me, but you know, she brainwashed me so much to the point where it was my choice as like an 8-year-old that I didn't want to see him because I just thought he was this huge monster. So she basically said it was me who didn't want to see him, which is true. But the reason I didn't want to see him was because she said all these horrible things about me. So like, what child would want to see somebody who actively abandoned them, right? Like that was my belief. So I had these like abandonment issues because I perceived this whole thing as abandonment. And again, that's going to be another story. But once I figured out the truth, I really didn't want to hear her talking badly about my dad anymore because I was now in contact with him and I knew the reality that like he's an okay person. So she started talking horribly about him again, Christmas Eve dinner, and I said to her very nicely at first, like, listen, I don't want to talk about my father. I don't want to like hear anything about him, good or bad. Like, we're just not talking about this today. Let's just have a nice Christmas dinner and, you know, like, let's just not talk about this topic. And then she got more angry and started yelling and really speaking about him even worse and saying worse things. And I said, like, literally, I will leave this table and go home right now if you continue to press this topic. And so she did. And then I actually left. Like, I actually got up, got my coat, got my husband's coat, got my dog's coat, and we left. And I felt so guilty because I just walked out on my mom on Christmas dinner. But at the same time, she was absolutely not respecting my boundaries at all. And she was yelling at me for trying to, you know, assert my boundaries and, you know, have her respect them. And she wouldn't. So the correct thing to do was to remove myself from that situation, which I did. And I absolutely did wonder if I would regret that moment when she died. Okay? So I also went extremely low emotionally detached contact with her and no contact. It was like a mix of both, just because there was some legal stuff that I still can't talk about right now. I will one day. But, when I set those boundaries of, cutting off the contact or extraordinarily limiting the contact, I also wondered, will I regret it when she dies? So she died, and the answer is no, I don't regret any of it. Like, I do not regret putting my mental health, my emotional health ahead of her selfishness. I did not regret it when I found out that she was on her deathbed. I did not regret it the moment that she died. I really don't regret any of the boundaries that I set with her because, at the end of the day, I've done my emotional work. And the universe knows that I tried. Like, the universe knows I tried. I really tried so hard to make our relationship work, to make her happy, all that kind of stuff. But she made the active choice to push her only child away. So, she made the choices she made. I tried to rebel against her choices and tell her how these choices were affecting me. And I tried to explain to her the consequences of, this is how I feel and whatever. And she just wasn't having it. She didn't care. So then I had to make my own choices to protect myself from her web of drama. And that's not something I regret at all. At all. I have zero regrets. Now, were there emotions when she was dying? Of course. Was my inner child hurting when she was dying and she died? Yes, absolutely. Do I still have some emotional work to do around this whole thing? Yeah, probably. I've done a ton of emotional work about it in the past couple of months as this had been, unfolding. But, just because it's already happened, it doesn't mean that I'm not going to have hard days in the future where I'm reminded of something and then I'm taken back to that place where it's oh my God. But then I know that I just have to process it emotionally and then that's okay, right? So the point of this, this video and me telling you this is that I don't regret setting my boundaries at all, okay? And that question did also come up, do I regret this? No, I don't, because I thought about it, because when you're in that emotional state, thoughts come up, absolutely, right? Anybody who watches my channel or follows my Instagram page or my podcast, whatever, you guys know, I've done the emotional work. I'm able to talk about this. I'm able to help other people with this, right? But that doesn't mean that in the moment I didn't have emotions. Of course I freaking did. Of course, absolutely, 1,000%. And I work through them as they come up, and I realized I don't regret my boundaries at all, because what would that have meant for me if I didn't set any boundaries with her? I would have probably still be living at home with my husband and dog, which would have just been a weird dynamic. I would probably still be paying her bills. I probably would have no sense of self. I'd probably still be in chronic pain. And, there's no way I would be a coach, at all, if I didn't set boundaries with her and start, opening my eyes to, the truth and everything. So I just want you to understand that death does not make somebody a saint, okay? So just because somebody dies, it doesn't mean that whatever they did to you, if they were abusive, of course, which I'm assuming they are if you're watching this video. If somebody was abusive towards you, okay, that doesn't change that fact just because that person died. It does not change it at all. Death, society has this thing of just making dead people saints no matter what, right? But at the end of the day, you don't know what, if they say don't speak badly about the dead, right? But if you're just telling the truth and being honest about your experience, like, you're not talking badly about somebody, you're just being honest. And just because that person's dead, it doesn't mean they're like a saint. It doesn't mean that they're sorry or whatever, right? Like, whatever the soul does after death, like, that's something I don't know if I'll ever get into that. Like, I'm not like religious, but I have my own spiritual beliefs, I guess. But like, you know, on a soul level, like, whatever, right? Like, I'm sure there's room for forgiveness, all that kind of shit. But like, on a human level, it doesn't change the fact that that person was abusive and that they were wrong, right? So just because they die, it doesn't mean that like the things and the choices that they've made in their life in the past that were horrible choices, that were abusive towards people, that doesn't get erased just because that person's dead, right? Like, it doesn't. So I just want you to understand that. And another thing that I will say is that narcissistic parents don't apologize or confess on their deathbed. And if you want to visit your dying narcissistic parent on their deathbed, that's your choice, and a choice that only you can make, right? And it's none of anybody's business whether or not you go or not. You know, there's some people who are like, hell no, I would never visit my narcissistic parent on their deathbed. They're already dead to me, whatever. There's some people who, you know, they just want confirmation that they're dying maybe, or, you know, have stuff that they want to get off of their own chest, or whatever reason, right? Like, you don't even need to have a reason for deciding or not deciding to visit. That's your choice, and no one can judge you for whatever choice you make. I just want to make sure that you are emotionally prepared to not receive closure from them, because they're not going to give you closure. They're just not. They are absolutely not going to give you any type of closure. You have to create your own closure. And that's what I pretty much did. Like, before she was on her deathbed, like long before that, she was already kind of dead to me. I already grieved that relationship that I had with her. And I did visit her on her deathbed, just, I don't even know why, right? Like, I just thought it was something that I wanted to do, like my higher self wanted to do that. But that doesn't mean it's right, and that doesn't mean that you should, okay? And I was not going there for any closure. Like, we all see these articles all over the internet about like the regrets of the dying, and then we wonder if our narcissistic parents will have any of those regrets, and the answer is no. Like, they are so committed to being right that, like, you know, their own mortality it doesn't faze them in life, you know? Like, a normal person can kind of like look at their life and be like, do I want my life to continue like this? Like, do I like the choices that I've been making? Like, I understand life is not permanent, and, you know, is there space? Is there room for me to be a better person? Narcissists don't do this. They don't. So don't expect that on their deathbed. You're not going to receive closure from a person who's been committed to being right and misunderstanding you and being abusive towards you. Here's how I want you to look at it. Was this person committed to misunderstanding you? Yes. Was this person committed to being abusive towards you? Was this person committed to being right and not giving a shit about how you feel? If the answer is yes to any of those questions, like, that's your closure. That is all the closure that you need. You know, you're not going to get that. It's not going to come in a pretty little box wrapped up and like they're on their deathbed. It's like, oh, here's your closure, by the way. Like, thanks for putting up with my abuse. No, it's not going to happen. And yeah, like, I knew eventually, like, my mom would die, just because, you know, parents die before their children, obviously. I didn't think it would happen now, to be honest. I thought it would happen 10 years from now, just because she was only 76. So, you know, I didn't know her health had gone to shit because I didn't speak to her for a year. And the attitude that I got from the hospital for not knowing what her health status was that's another story. They were pretty judgy towards me. But I was the only next of kin. Like, literally, she's alienated every single family member. I'm the only child. She's been divorced forever. Her only sibling hates her. Like, you know, I'm the only next of kin. So I had to make medical decisions, all that kind of stuff. I had power of attorney that we signed in 2011 that I kind of, you know, forgot about, didn't realize I actually had to make medical decisions. But I was in an emotionally detached enough state to be able to do it without feeling guilty or regretting anything or any of that. So that's why it's so important to do the work. That's why it's so important to do the inner emotional work. And what's funny is when I did visit my mom, she was really nice because she had dementia, which I was not aware of. So she was not there, like she was gone. She was already gone. But this didn't make me feel like, oh, she's nice now. Oh my God, like she's forgiven herself. She's, she's ready to apologize. No, I did not look at it that way at all. It's just like, this is the disease. It affects the brain. She also had a massive heart attack. So there's definitely some brain damage that comes along with that. So yeah, like she eventually lost the ability to speak altogether and then eventually died. But before she lost the ability to speak, like she was super nice, which was weird. It was really weird just like hearing how nice she was. But I didn't see that as closure because I had already created my closure and I understood that this is just the disease. Like this is how the disease progresses and it doesn't mean anything. Like it does not mean that she wants to be a big happy family at all. So, my own closure, I let go of the resentment that I held towards her because I held so much resentment and anger towards her for like what she did to me and all that kind of stuff. And I processed those emotions and then I was able to let go of those emotions. And so then I was able to let go of her. So, some people call this forgiveness. I call it letting go. I also call it giving my soul peace because I just didn't need to be tormented anymore by her abuse. So that's why I created my own closure. So I hope this is helpful. I hope this helps anybody who's, in a situation where they don't know how they're going to feel when a narcissistic parent dies. It's not the easiest thing I've been through, of course. Like it was a very difficult period of time because there were absolutely a lot of emotions and a lot of legal shit that I had to deal with that I still have to deal with. That, it's all part of the story, so I'll share it one day. I just can't right now. But yeah, like at the end of the day, she was never sorry. She had to do what was right for her, and that's what mattered to her the most. Not me, not my well-being, not anything in my childhood. It was all about her and her feelings, how she perceived the world, how she had to be right about everything, and she was willing to just not have anybody in her family care about her. There was no funeral because no one would attend, right? She made those choices in her life to be that way, and that's a consequence of it. That's the closure. That's all the closure I need. So yeah, I will end this here. I hope this helps. If this is something you're going through and you want to talk to somebody one-on-one, I will include in the description the link to work with me one-on-one if this is something that you want to explore. And I will always leave off with my reminder of do the emotional work because that's what's going to set you free ultimately from all of this. So yeah, I hope this helps and enjoy the rest of your evening, day, whatever time in the world it is, where you're at when you're watching this. We'll see you next time.